Hello again and welcome to another GCSE Computer Science Theory lesson. This video is going to be on Unit 6, Social Engineering and Malware. Now before we get started, let me just remind you about what we talked about in my last video. Social engineering, vaguely put, is the idea of manipulating a person inside an organization as a way of hacking. So rather than using programming and software in order to hack an organization or a person, you just use human interaction in order to exploit some security. Well, in terms of the AQA exam paper, there are 4 different types of social engineering that we need to be aware of. So first of all is blagging. So blagging is the process of targeting somebody directly with a fake scenario in order to fraudulently obtain their information. Blagging is going to be the most effective if you've done your research in advance. So if I were to try and I don't know, scam my next door neighbor out of some money, I would do some digging, I would do some research first, I would look them up on social media, try and find information about their relatives and somehow use that to exploit them. Next we'll talk about phishing. So phishing is different to blagging in the sense that phishing is sent out to lots of people at once. So you send out lots of fraudulent messages in batch to loads and loads of people, hoping that at least one person will bite. That's why it's called phishing, because the idea that somebody bites when you sort of cast out all of these messages at once. So just to clarify the difference between blagging and phishing. So blagging is directly targeting somebody who you've been researching, whereas phishing, you're sending out like an email or a text message to thousands, maybe even millions of people at once, hoping that somebody will fall for your scam. So some examples of phishing, that could come in the form of an email. So here's an email of somebody pretending to be from PayPal. Now most people would not fall for this scam, but you can bet good money that maybe one person in 10 million might be foolish enough to fall for this. One thing to clarify is that phishing doesn't have to come in the form of an email. It can also come in the form of an SMS message. So in this example here is a text message that could have been sent out to hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions of people. Chances are at least somebody is going to fall for this and give away their financial information. Now, what we'll talk about next is something called farming. So farming is the act of using a fake user interface impersonating a genuine organization. Now, often students confuse phishing with farming. I mean, they're quite similar sounding concepts, and the concepts are quite similar. So farming is when you have, for example, a fake website, and somebody thinks that it's genuine, so they'll give away their information. So if we take a look at this web page in front of me, it's a login system for a bank account in the UK called HSBC. It looks pretty genuine to begin with. There's nothing obviously wrong about this web page until we look closely at the web address. What do we notice wrong here? Well, we're not using HTTPS, so there's no S there, so that's a warning sign. You'd expect the bank to be using secure HTTP. And if we look very closely at the name of the domain here, it says HBSC, not HSBC. So that's a telltale sign here that this is not a genuine website. This website is an example of a farming scam. The unsuspecting victim is going to accidentally give away their login information by using this website. And just to clarify, farming is not to be confused with phishing. I suppose the reason why students typically get these two confused is because phishing attacks normally take people to farming websites. So if we look at this example here, this text message is a phishing scam, but that web address will take you to a farming website. I notice that I use the term here user interface rather than website. Farming doesn't have to take place on a website. It could also be through a dodgy app that you download through the App Store. It could be some dodgy software that you download. It could come in various forms. It could even be a real world scenario. Maybe you've got some kind of terminal or cash machine that you would be using, and it turns out it's not a real cash machine at all. You'll type in some information into a fake cash machine that's run by some kind of criminal gang. You never know. And finally, we'll talk about shouldering. This is also known as shoulder surfing. Well, it's called shouldering because it's named after the idea of looking over somebody's shoulder while they type in their PIN number at a cash machine. Now, one thing to be aware of, shouldering isn't just in the context of cash machines. It could also be about watching people type in their passwords when they log into a computer, or watching somebody type in their username when they log into something using their tablet or smartphone. So shouldering comes in various forms. You don't actually have to be physically present to shoulder somebody. You could hide a spy camera in somebody's room, and you could monitor what people are typing into keyboards and such through that camera. So shouldering takes many shapes and many different forms. Next, we'll talk about different types of malware. And like I said in our last video, I just want to clarify that a virus is a type of malware. Commonly, people, when they talk about malware, they say virus, just something to be aware of. The correct term is malware. Virus is actually just a type of malware. So for the purposes of AQA, you need to be aware of 4 different types of malware: virus, Trojan, spyware, and adware. So the definition of a virus: it's malware that duplicates itself. A virus will make copies on your computer's hard drive, and if the virus is sophisticated enough, it can also spread from computer to computer. It's named a virus after viruses that we see in biology. So a virus out in the real world is something that duplicates around your body and will spread from person to person. The same applies to a computer virus. It can spread within the computer system, and it can also jump from computer to computer. That's why it's called a virus. Next, we'll talk about Trojan. Trojan is malware in disguise. So how these work, the idea is you download a file thinking that it's something that it isn't, and you're going to be foolish, you're going to download it, and it turns out it's malware or something that you don't want on your computer. Why don't I give you an example? That might be better than just sort of wording it. Let's take a look at a little Google search that I made recently. I wanted to download Mario Kart 8 for my laptop, and lo and behold, a search result came up that has a big green button saying install game, and apparently I can download Mario Kart 8 on Windows, and it's only 3.6 megabytes. I think this might be a Trojan virus. I don't know, should I make a follow-up video where I install this and see what happens? Maybe not. Okay, next we'll talk about spyware. So spyware, it collects information and spies on a user. Apologies for the typo there. I can't be bothered changing that. So spyware, it collects information on a user. Is it really that bad having someone spying on you? I mean, the government spies on us all the time. You know, most people don't mind. Microsoft in Windows 10 spies on you all the time, and most people don't care or notice. Well, why is spyware a problem? Well, the thing is, criminals could be watching what details you type into a computer. They could see what accounts you're logging into. They could see your passwords being typed in. So this could lead to things like your Facebook accounts or social media accounts being compromised. It can lead, worst case scenario, to money being stolen from you. And finally, we'll talk about adware. So adware is a type of malware that is going to spam your computer up with loads and loads of irritating adverts. Best case scenario, we could describe adware as being super annoying, but worst case scenario, adware could actually lead you to accidentally clicking on dodgy adverts and downloading even more malware or falling for scams that are being advertised to you. So malware on its own isn't necessarily dangerous, but it could accidentally point a user towards other forms of malware. Now, just one final point to mention. It is very rare that a piece of malware is solely one type of thing on its own. So you don't normally get a virus that is just a virus and nothing else. And if we think about a Trojan, something can't just be a Trojan on its own. It needs to be something else in order to be dangerous. So generally, Malware is a combination of these four characteristics. So you can accidentally download a Trojan, and it turns out to be some spyware. So you download a Trojan that spies on you, but it also spreads around your network. So you could consider this. You could consider a single piece of malware to be a Trojan, spyware, and a virus all at the same time. I mean, stick some dodgy adverts on it, and it's all four of these types of malware. So just to clarify, malware is a combination of these four characteristics. It's very rare that you get a single category of these things on its own.